Welcome to Season 3 of the Strange, Rare, and Peculiar podcast, a place where we explore the past, present, and future of homeopathy from the perspective of a couple of insiders who have been around the homeo block a couple of times.
Homeo block?
You know about arnica. You've helped with a cough before. But what happens when your go-to remedies stop working? When symptoms move, change shape, or just don't make sense anymore? That's when it's time to get help from someone trained. At Homeopathy Help Now, you get real homeopathic care with student practitioners supervised by certified professionals. It's thoughtful, safe, and affordable. Visit homeopathyhelpnow.com to request a consultation today.
I think we need to jump right in.
Go.
So, there are two things. We're going to talk about aggravation because there is some chatter going on. And some, let's say, not entirely correct interpretation of the reality. We could talk about that. I also just wanted to address something that is on, I guess it's Facebook. I don't really look at these sites, but some of the folks on our team do, and then they send me screenshots. And I guess there's been a conversation going on where people are concerned that some of the things that we've been talking about with people who have had a lot of remedies, that it's either hyperbole or that I've got one or two cases that I'm continually referencing. And I just wanted to say that I wish that were the case. I would feel a lot better if that were the case. But this has been going on for a couple of years. But it is, it seems to be. I don't know if the problem is escalating, but the people that we're seeing more and more. And I would say that, I have seen 40 to 50 this year. Cases where people have been taking or have been prescribed. And this is my personal practice. This is in our teaching clinic. This in the practice of folks that we supervise. We have, like, if you are a member of the AHE community, AHE and the Institute for the Advancement of Homeopathy, you become a member of our Slack channel. Slack is a productivity app that we use to stay in touch. And we can keep track of how many people are sort of in the community and adjacent to the community by the number of people who are on our general channel. And that number has been hovering at around 270 for the last year. So that means that of those 270 people, we're getting input from people. And because they know that this is a conversation and a concern, because we have seen cases in our teaching clinic where people have where we've heard firsthand, and so not just like one person, a practitioner, but rather 50 people in a clinic, and we see the remedy list and we hear people talk about how many remedies they have taken. It's real, and so I'm as surprised as you are. I don't want it to be true, but it is not a one-off or a two-off or just me or hyperbole. In fact, our research office has been gathering information about this, and the unfortunate working title is the 10,000 Remedy Project. 10,000 Remedy Project? 1,000 Remedy Project? 1,000 Remedy Project. Yeah. There's hyperbole. Okay, fair enough. But I also want to be clear that I don't feel like it's for me to judge what people are doing or how they choose to, do what they do. I just want to be clear about what homeopathy is and best practices, because we have 230 years of clinical evidence. And so speaking of Slack, that sound you just heard was Al's Slack. I should turn mine off too. But because there are people showing up and saying, I did this or I was prescribed this. And when I say this, I don't mean, a couple of different remedies or a normal amount of remedies or even, alternating remedies in an acute. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about people who have taken anywhere from, 50 to 100 remedies in a short time, like a year, and are taking multiple doses at the same time, such that a person might have taken, over 1,000 doses of a homeopathic remedy or a variety of remedies inside of a period of time like a year.
And that is not uncommon these days.
That's not uncommon these days, but it's also not, it is in no way related to homeopathy.
It's unheard of in the context of our arc in homeopathy, though.
Right. There's nothing like it. So, for those conversations that are being had, that maybe this is an exaggeration or maybe isn't true. I wish that were the case. But but that's what we're hearing. So again, not here to judge, just here to talk about homeopathy and to say what we're seeing. Because I also have been accused of not being open or welcoming. So anyway, we're trying to help.
Really?
Yeah. Well, you were there.
So, all right. That's a
turd in the punch bowl
to start our discussion.
Yeah.
But now that we see a turd floating, let's drink around it.
Ew.
Care for some tea, my darling?
Oh gosh, why are you so gross? I thought you were gonna say let's just flush it, but no. Do you want a plate to put that on? Hold on.
Yeah,
Just put it in this cup. It's the tea ritual. We've got this giant pot of tea, but we're taking the tea basket out so that it doesn't continue to steep and become bitter. All right, so here's what we're here to talk about. Aggravations in homeopathy. So
define.
We're going to define it. We're going to talk about the philosophy around it, and also just
define our terms.
Define our terms.
Yeah. So an aggravation in homeopathy is oft spoken about. It's always spoken about in the second prescription chapters of textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
That sound, my friends, is me stirring my tea.
You and the noises.
Wait till I get going in this. Ooh, where's that shortbread? And the second prescription chapters, of course, are sometimes called evaluating the patient's response, or the second prescription.
Yep.
Or case management in homeopathy. Whatever textbook you've read, the classics from Stuart Close, Roberts,
mm-hmm.
Wright, Hubbard, and then I suppose closer to home, if you read Luc de Schepper's book, Hahnemann Revisited.
He died.
Yeah.
Not that long ago.
Yeah.
God
but
rest his soul.
The point is, it's often spoken about. And by definition, an aggravation is a magnification of what was already there.
Yep.
That is what we're talking about. It's not a new symptom. It's not an old symptom. It's not a return of an old symptom. It's not a proving symptom. It's nothing other than a magnification of what the client already had when they first came to see the homeopath, right?
Yes, and Hahnemann was very clear about it. So for the folks, there's some conversation that there's no such thing as an aggravation. And I guess I think the way of saying it is that in the quote-unquote dirty word of classical homeopathy, these rogues don't, that an aggravation is part of Hahnemannian, it's part of like what you sign up for. But if you do protocol homeopathy, you don't get an aggravation. I don't know what to say about the protocol homeopathy, but we can talk about what Hahnemann meant, because it is true that there is the potential for an aggravation. But here's the thing. Number one, aggravations can and should be managed. And number two, that was kind of Hahnemann's whole impetus for his continued work on the refining of potency, posology, and delivery of remedies.
Right.
And so by the time he gets to the 6th edition of the Organon, if you study the differences between the 5th and the 6th editions of the Organon, so up to the 4th edition of the Organon, it's give a dose and wait. The 5th edition of the Organon is recognition of chronic diseases and the necessity of the repetition of the dose, therefore in water.
And different each
and
time.
different each time. And the 6th edition of the Organon is a completely new delivery method where the ratio of 1 to 100, standard for the centesimal potency in the 4th and 5th edition of the Organon, becomes 1 to 50,000.
So the manufacture of remedies is different.
The preparation is
The
different.
preparation, the manufacture is different, and the delivery is different.
And the whole, and what Hahnemann was keen to do was to reduce, minimize, or eradicate the idea of the aggravation. Now, you can make the aggravation into a big thing, right? You could like say, oh yeah, I had such an aggravation, da da da. And there we can talk about sort of ways in which aggravations can occur or can be mitigated. But we can also talk about, you know, like if you look at the difference between the 5th and 6th editions of the Organon, so if you do the side-by-side comparison, you see that in the aphorisms being the numbered paragraphs in the Organon, in the aphorisms that are around the concept of aggravation, between the 5th and 6th edition of the Organon, in those publications, Hahnemann changes those aphorisms, each one, to insert acute disease, that there is a different way in which the medicines should be expected to react in an acute disease, and different in a chronic disease. And then he goes on to talk about how with the application of or use of the 50 millesimal potency, that whole concept changes. And that is related to the treatment of a chronic disease. So that's kind of the first thing I think that needs to be understood, right?
Yeah, seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the statement aggravations, do they happen? Yeah, they happen, especially with 4th edition prescribing. I think I've seen an aggravation in using 5th edition prescribing in a client that just kept going.
Yeah.
And I've had some spectacular situations where clients have aggravated in the early years of my practice when they did not follow my instructions or directives around the amount of doses and the administration of the remedy.
Which is kind of interesting in that, you know, where we started, I actually hadn't put 2 and 2 together with this when I was saying about the cases we're seeing where people have taken all these remedies. It's funny, right? Because you would think that there would be aggravations all over the place, but if you're taking multiple remedies at a time, who knows what?
The vital force doesn't have a chance to rally.
Exactly.
And then push.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what Al just said is really important, because this idea of aggravation, I mean, there are a whole lot of factors involved. So you could, if one were to be I'm going to use one of my favorite phrases, a ham-fisted prescriber. Do you prefer ham-handed or ham-fisted?
I prefer ham. Just give me the ham. Love it.
Oh my gosh. As it's coming out of my mouth, I'm thinking you'd like it on a sandwich, is what you would like.
I'd
with
put
mustard.
it on a hoagie.
In a hoagie. Sorry, a total aside. We were watching a video last night. Living in Philadelphia, the Philly accents are so good. And I was showing Al these videos of this woman I love. And she's got such a good Philly accent. And she was talking about the Pope. Pope.
The Pope.
Do you remember that one?
Yeah,
about Pope Leo. That he went to Villanova. Anyway, so coming back, where are we? Ham-fisted. So back to the ham. So this idea, though, of how one gives a remedy, right? So if you are, if you're just saying, oh, so-and-so has, you know, whatever, let's give them a remedy, and you give a high potency, you could totally blow them out of the water. And a repeated potency could cause a big aggravation. And Hahnemann talks about this in terms of the in terms of acute disease, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that. We'll go through the aphorisms. I think it'll be kind of fun. I mean, that's my idea of fun, but just to look at specifically what that means.
Well, his language is that he says it agitates and stirs up and angers the vital force in various passages.
Well, so here, we'll take an example. This is aphorism 159 in the 5th edition of the Organon. He says, the smaller the dose of the homeopathic remedy is, so much the slighter and shorter is the apparent increase of the disease during the first hours. is the, oh, sorry, my emphasis was wrong there. The smaller the dose of the homeopathic remedy is, so much the slighter and shorter is the apparent increase of the disease during the first hours. He modifies that in the 6th edition of the Organon to say, the smaller the dose of the homeopathic remedy is in the treatment of acute diseases, so much the slighter and shorter is the apparent increase of the disease during the first hours. Then he talks about the potential for an aggravation in chronic diseases. That's in aphorism 161, and that's specific to the way that one delivers the 50 millesimolar potency. So basically, the short review of that is when you are delivering the 50 millesimolar potency, the whole idea is that you've got all sorts of leeway in how it's delivered. Therefore, any quote-unquote aggravation, and I'm using air quotes or scare quotes because it's not truly an aggravation, anything that's happening if you're talking about a chronic issue is related to the delivery of the medicine. In other words, do you need more dilution? Do you need more time between the doses? It's not the aggravation. The aggravation actually comes at the end. And that leads us to something that's very important, because the whole point is that you're looking at, well, actually, let me think about this for a sec, because there are a few concepts that sort of need to be understood. There's posology and the delivery of the remedies as part of case management. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you have to understand the primary and secondary action of the medicines, because it's the primary action responsible for the aggravation. And then you also have to understand the difference between the organic and the medicinal disease.
The natural and the medicinal.
Exactly.
Yep.
So if we start from the back and go forward, the natural or the organic and the medicinal disease. So basically, when we talk about the law of similars, when you think about the law of similars and how it works in the healing paradigm, it's basically that the remedy is just a stronger, similar, energetic pattern to the natural disease. I love what Jeremy says. He calls it the poker principle. I see you and I raise you one. He's got the best analogies.
Stronger and similar.
Stronger and similar.
Yeah.
And so depending on how much stronger or how similar the medicine is, that is going to dictate if, when, and how, and for how long an aggravation will occur. So if one does their work and chooses the most similar in the most appropriate potency, then the likelihood of the aggravation will be minimal at most. It's just matching the resonance.
And so the job of the homeopath, pattern match signs and symptoms of the natural disease, and give, and essentially what you're saying, the artificial disease which is in a bottle.
Yep.
That's what you're giving.
That's right.
That artificial disease in a bottle makes an impression on the vital force, depending on its accuracy, depending on its shape.
Yep.
And it is the elasticity of the vital force that does the work.
Exactly.
Right.
So, and that's a really important thing. So what Al just said, this elasticity of the vital force doing the work, is that when the homeopathic remedy doesn't do anything other than give a message.
I think that's going to be a challenge for some folks that are listening, because I agree with you. The homeopathic remedy does nothing
Except give a message.
Well, it gives a message and a really clear. It's kind of the key opening a door when it's the right shape for the case. And so,
Right.
these remedies, they're sitting there as potential, and they're not biologically active. They don't do anything. The biological response is from the vital force, not from the remedy.
Right.
How hard is that to get across to allopathic
Impossible.
thinkers?
Impossible. Right? Yeah. I mean, it's hard even for homeopaths to grok it because we are so indoctrinated. I mean, from the time of Galen, right? The Galenic medicine is the antipathic delivery. And so you're just basically overpowering in an antipathic way, not in a stronger similar.
So I think that's really, really important. But I'm just also want to just noodle it through.
Yeah.
And that is that if the remedy that you're giving is not biologically active, if, say, the combination remedy you're giving or the protocol you're giving is not, they're not biologically active, then the reason for no aggravation is because of a lack of accuracy.
Yeah, but then
given the shape of the natural disease.
But the more you give of a remedy, I mean, that which does not cure proves. So, I mean, okay, so we could look at that through the lens of accessory symptoms. So Hahnemann talks about there are two types of aggravations. One is the primary action of the remedy exciting the vital force, right? So that aggravation would just be, and again, he talks about this in acute disease, it's just a little blip that says, here we go. But if the remedy is, this is the example where he talks about the two triangles overlapping one another, and if they don't perfectly overlap, then what's left over, those are called accessory symptoms. And because you're giving the most minute dose, those accessory symptoms will be hardly noticeable.
So, but for clarity, those accessory symptoms, they're not aggravations.
They are not aggravations.
Yeah.
Right. They're not an aggravation. But the reason that I brought that up is because you had mentioned like protocols and these, I think they call them like clearings or detoxification protocols or whatever. They are not based on the symptoms, right? So a homeopathic remedy matches the signs and symptoms of the pattern of unintegrated energy in the person. Boy, let me say that for the muggles. It matches symptoms. So what Hahnemann is talking about, Hahnemann talks about treating the, quote, totality of the symptoms of the disease. There is no place where he says you treat the whole person. Symptoms of the disease can affect the whole person, mind, body, spirit, mental, emotional, and physical, but you're not treating the whole person. You're not treating the healthy person. You're treating the signs and symptoms of the disease. And in this case, because we have to talk about homeopathy from a legal standpoint as being different than the terminology that doctors use, we would just say the unintegrated energy pattern, which is the same as the disease, the part of the person that is out of balance, out of health. And so you're taking into account only that which has happened since the person was last well. That's aphorism 6.
And that pattern, that characteristic, that totality of characteristic symptoms is the natural disease.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
if those are symptoms of true chronic disease.
Right. Yeah. So I hear it bandied about in sort of the anti-classical, wing of, I don't know, I don't want to say wing of homeopathy because it's not homeopathy when you do it in a way that's not. Do you know what I mean? I like to just be different because I want to be clear, like who's doing what. So like Hahnemannian homeopathy says, which is different than what people have interpreted to be Kentian homeopathy. And I think that's where a lot of this confusion has come in.
Totally.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
I think that people, if folks would go back to the pre-Kentian way of understanding homeopathy, then we leave behind this whole person, the really high potency, wait 6 years before repeating a dose and all of that stuff. Is it that simple?
Well, it's got to be part of the conversation today because that's where the aggravation really finds its way into our literature.
Same where?
Well, you've got a few references there where Hahnemann's talking about, the agitation of the vital force.
Yes, Hahnemann talks about aggravation. If you want to go look at it, it's aphorism 156 to 161.
But where it gets celebrated is with Kent.
Yes.
And it's a double-edged sword because he says, on the one hand, I'm fine with an aggravation, and the best cures happen after there's an aggravation of the original symptoms.
That's right. Kent says that. I don't think Hahnemann says that.
No, Kent says that.
Yeah.
And then Kent writes that, and then what you've got is this interesting thing that happens with students, and I'm going to say, it's always about a third of the way through the program, and it coincides with that leap from I don't know what I don't know to now I know what I don't know.
That's terrifying, isn't it?
So it's that unconscious incompetence.
Yeah, the Dunning-Kruger
conscious incompetence.
Yeah,
and it's realizing that if I do this, maybe I am going to be responsible for an aggravation. And associated with that piece of tweak in the brain of the learner is a loss of confidence in prescribing.
Right.
And that's why sometimes you've got students that come into homeopathy super confident, then they lose their confidence, and then they need to regain it step by step, brick by brick, trial by trial.
You're right. I haven't thought about that as being the time where people sort of lose the
they read Vatholkas, who's a straight up Kentian. Well, he in the science of homeopathy, it's very Kentian.
It's very Kentian in 4th edition.
And then they'll get a hold of Kent at some point, and Kent puts a fear of God into them, and so you got.
I mean, that comment that he makes about how he'd rather be with the razor blades and all that. Yeah. He makes an incredibly racist statement, followed by then in the hands of someone. What does he say? High potencies.
A high potency prescriber that doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it's in the Hepasulf lecture in Materia Medica. So we've got a couple of things going on, I think. It's the idea in homeopathy historically gets I think embedded into baked into the cake is the language you use. Mm-hmm. Gets baked into the cake in the 1890s, 1900s, beginning of the 20th century. Those homeopaths that were taught by Kent spread the word. Mm-hmm. Aggravation became a thing, and as I mentioned before, sometimes a thing to be celebrated in a way. And I have to say, I think that follows my own experiences as well in
Talk
clinic.
About that. Yeah.
Well, I went to a Kentian school, and the types of clients that I was seeing in my, when I was in supervision, when I'd been watching, and then when I was being supervised, were essentially healthy, Southwest English, Devon folk, mm-hmm. who all lived to 95 years old, all ate meat and potatoes, and had big acutes, and were pretty healthy. I think they were unwell, healthy people.
Yeah.
And what it meant was, when you put all of that together with decent vitality, that a lot of the prescriptions would have been, here, take Natrum muriaticum 200, take one dose, and then we'll see you in 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Most of the time, that was fine. Yeah. I think I saw so many carb cases
right.
in the southwest of England, and a truckload of sulfur. Mm-hmm. Those farmers, oh my God, in their welly boots and their shorts and their big red noses, mm-hmm. And their funny proclivities, and the kids of those mm-hmm. of that stock.
Yeah.
Essentially healthy people. So when you put all of that together, for me, what that says is that my posology, or my choice of my clinical intervention, was a centesimal potency, 4th edition, and not too many obstacles, which meant not too much repetition. Right? Yeah. And so it made kind of perfect sense. I remember this kid in clinic, it wasn't my prescription, but this kid in clinic got silica 10M mm-hmm. for an ear infection.
How'd that go?
The mum rang an hour later. Mm-hmm. We were still in the clinic.
Yeah. Oh, I know the story.
And said, "You'll never believe what happened. The ear infection is better."
Wasn't there a toy in there or something?
But a watch battery came out of my kid's nose. Uh-huh. And the story was that a couple of weeks earlier, the kid had stuffed a watch battery up its nose, mm-hmm. messing with its
ENT system.
Discharge ensued and all the rest of it. Now, I don't know that there's an aggravation on that, so maybe it's not a relevant story. But the point that I'm making is that high potency, strong vitality, high potencies, single doses, made perfect sense. Kentian homeopathy.
But it's totally different.
Then you move to shitty Sydney, or I don't know, wherever you were.
You can't say that.
What do you mean?
Shitty.
Oh no, the stresses and dramas of 21st living and the hustle of living in a, city of 5 million people.
I mean, are you working with developed chronic disease or not? Developed miasmatic disease, or are you just working with someone who's got their, kind of quiet, slumbering miasmatic disease, and they throw off an acute, and you give them a centesimal potency remedy and on with their day. The healthier the person, the greater the likelihood that you can do that. I mean, I remember in the early days of my practice, you get kids with ear infections and all that, but it's different now. These kids that are coming in that have, pediatric autoimmune, diseases, neuropsychiatric diseases. This is, if a kid has PANDAS, then you need to understand how to manage a developed chronic disease. It's really different.
Well, that's the point. And for me, when I think back about my early days in practice, and my early days in practice, when I'm saying that, I do mean in working in Sydney.
Yeah.
And essentially, what I did that
that's enough.
dissuaded me from my love of 4th edition prescribing was the amount of difficulty I had in saying, we're going to wait. Mm-hmm. We're going to wait. I knew what the right thing to do was when there's a reaction, when there's an aggravation. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've given a centesimal remedy. There's a duration of action.
Right.
What are you going to do? That's such a disadvantage of 4th edition prescribing.
Yeah.
And then you've got to essentially say to a person, well, I know that your kid is really, really anxious at the moment, but let's just wait for another couple of weeks.
I have a couple clients that are in that situation right now, and I feel really bad.
And it's really tough.
It's really tough.
Menstrual pain, headaches, migraines, and you're saying, we're going to wait.
Yeah, but now, this is the thing.
Kent could. We can't.
No, and we shouldn't.
Yeah.
Well, unless... See, this is the thing that gets complicated, because it seems like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth, because on one hand, we're saying, no, you don't wait, you continue to, you prescribe, but then I'm also saying, and when I've got these cases that have had literally hundreds of remedies, you have to wait to understand what the vital force can do.
Oh, that's a different conversation.
It is, but I just wanted to be clear. I grabbed the Kent lecture on Hip Ourself, he's talking about high potency prescriber, and I just want to be clear. It's not that we're anti high potency prescriber. I think the moral of this story is that potency and posology, because it's a case management issue and understanding what to do, how to do it. Are you working with something acute? Are you working with something chronic? I mean, like, I'll give an example. For me, if you gave me a 10M of a chronic remedy, I'd be laid up for 6 months. But when I stepped on a wasp nest, how many 1M and 10M remedies did you give me in rapid succession? In fact, because I was getting shocky, you put several remedies into a thing of water, and I was sipping it until I was stable enough for us to figure out the single remedy. That was a life and death situation, right? I mean, I think that's really...
That's it.
You with Lyme disease.
Well,
I've been giving you 1M. Yeah.
1M. I've taken 1M dry.
Yep.
A lot.
Yep.
And then some liquid.
Yeah, but I've been saying to you, no, just take more dry doses. It's like banging that acute. But each thing is different, right? And you were at a stage, like when you first started, when you first presented with symptoms, we didn't start with that. But as you had a very particular expression of symptoms, it made sense to go at that, very clear set of symptoms with a very clear remedy, and it's helped you so much. But you don't take a 1M. If we were dealing with your chronic stuff, we'd never do that. I mean, you might get to that point, but most of the time, 50 millesimal potency allows the removal of the aggravation from the treatment of the chronic disease.
There is no aggravation.
No.
I haven't had an aggravation in my own clinic. I say it. Well, I always touch wood when I say it. But an aggravation and a worry about an aggravation has not been a part of my homeopathy in 20 years.
No.
And that coincides with 5th and 6th edition prescribing.
Totally.
Yeah.
And students are funny because they get a little worked up in clinic, like, why are we always giving an LM? It's like, so that you don't have to deal with an aggravation. I mean, sometimes we do. Sometimes we give centesimal potencies, definitely. But I just want to read a couple of excerpts from Kent, right, who was a high potency prescriber. But he says, if our medicines were not powerful enough to kill folks, they would not be powerful enough to cure sick folks. I mean, Let that sink in. People who are saying, oh, no, it's totally fine. Take it all. Just all of them. Then he says, it might be dangerous to administer these remedies that have a tendency to cause, he's talking about ourselves, so suppuration and da-da-da, and you should at least proceed cautiously in using them. After you have seen a great many cases, you will find that you had killed some of them. And he says,
it's important to hear that, folks.
Yeah.
That's important to hear, that one of our greatest homeopaths ever says, yeah, of course, we'll kill a few.
Well, he's saying if our medicines were not powerful enough to kill folks, they would not be powerful enough to cure sick folks. Yeah. He says these remedies, they are means of tremendous harm as well as tremendous good. He says, it is well to know all the elements in a case. Then, if you have administered a remedy and killed your patient, you know at least what you've done. And then he says it's better to know what you have done if you have killed your patient than to be ignorant of it and to go on and kill more in the same way.
Yeah.
Now, let's not go here and put the, homeopathic remedies are killing people. No. He basically, if you see what he's saying, is there are ways that these remedies can be used safely. They are powerful, and you need to know how to use them. And so, another lesson, I guess, in all of this is there's even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So we could be talking about Kent and his high potency single remedy prescribing and the challenges within it, and also take from some of his, lectures to say the realization also of what he's doing. And even though, we might say that he made some, the ways in which Kent's work was interpreted did result in a sort of dilution of Hahnemannian principles over time. People just took it, that's a story for another day, because it's kind of talking about the early 20th century and the sort of Jungian and psychospiritual interpretations of homeopathy, which isn't what we're talking about today. Suffice it to say, when you come back to Hahnemann, which is where I always land, he's really clear. The aphorisms that are about aggravation, they're clear. Wait, I just lost my...
And I suppose I feel like I need to kind of summarize it. It's unfortunate. I believe that it's deeply unfortunate that for learners of homeopathy, they don't learn something that started and then morphed. And what we have today is this.
Right. You're talking about the profession of homeopathy or the practice of.
Yeah. What they have to learn is that homeopathy was, in a way, usurped in the 1880s. Diluted, usurped, and went crazy west.
Totally.
Under the influence of basically Kent and his Swedenborgianism, which was then taken and turned into an ism. So that what we have by the 1980s, when homeopathy came back and was in its revival, is a misunderstanding of the origins of homeopathy.
Yep.
And so this thread of Hahnemann that runs the whole way through homeopathy till the 80s and the 90s and the noughties and today has remained unchanged and pretty clear.
It's totally clear.
And that progressed. Hahnemann, what he said in 1810 changed in 1828. It changed in 1843.
Yep.
And who knows, it might have changed again. But we've just got to understand that there's different threads that I suppose predominated in homeopathy.
Yes.
At various points in the last century, creating the situation that I think is difficult for learners.
I think so too. I remember when we were talking about our students and taking the CHC exam back when we used to recommend that exam, and going through all of the subjects, there's a lot of Kentian stuff, and it's Kent and Vitulkas. And so sometimes, not that the principles are in contradiction to Hahnemann, but they are incomplete in that they don't they don't address the 5th and 6th editions of the organon. So if you're talking about an aggravation, for example, or posology, or remedy reactions, you're looking at a 4th edition. In other words, give a dose and wait expression. And so I was always afraid that our students could get something wrong because they're overthinking, because they understood the Hahnemannian.
So there's one other corner of the discussion of aggravations that I think is worth just emphasizing, and that is that sometimes the reaction that a client has after taking their first prescription is hard to interpret. And so an aggravation might look like something else for a little while.
Talk about that. I think this is important.
Yeah, and so, well, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So I gave a woman a nice dose of Nux vomica to take before she got on a plane and went back. She lived in Bali. And...
a dry dose?
No. It was a liquid dose.
Okay.
Maybe it was a dry dose. I think it was a bottle of pills. Anyway, the point... So I'm going to say 4th edition.
Okay.
So she rang me 2 weeks later and said, I'm feeling amazing in all conceivable ways. Like my energy level is good, mentally I'm sharp, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
The only problem is that my eyes have swollen shut and I can't see.
Oh my gosh.
And it's making it hard to live.
I'll say.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so had she been in my office, I might have reacted somewhat differently. But anyway, she was a few thousand miles away. And so the thing that I just got her to wait, and I talked her through, told her about chamomile tea bags on the eyes. And she wrote, she called me. And
Collect? You would have deserved it.
Collect. I'm calling on the phone. And she said that her eye drops were like acid rain, that she had searing pokers in the eyes, and that to relieve the symptoms, she had to put her head in the freezer. Now, this is a woman that ran a company.
Yeah.
And, when the CEO has to have her head in the freezer.
Right. It's inefficient at the very least.
Yeah. And so the point that I'm making is that as that alarming situation was going on, and that's the worst situation I've been in, where I've got a client who's paid good money, expecting a nice gentle cure. She's got mental clarity.
Yeah.
She's got energetic clarity.
Yeah.
General symptoms are good. Head's in the freezer. And so that lasted for about 3.5 weeks. And then she said something to me, and I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, I've been taking the remedy every day, like you said. And I said, whoa. And it was at that point that, was this a proving symptom, or was this an aggravation? Really became, important. And so she'd contributed to the situation. Well, I contributed to it by giving her a high potency of Nux vomica, and she contributed to it by
not listening to your instructions.
Not listening to my instructions. And so, practically, as I'm thinking, it's not a proven because she's not been taking the remedy. Yes, she has. That realization came, and then a realization that she had those symptoms before. Oh. And this could well be an aggravation. So that drama that essentially lasted 3 weeks, it was not insignificant.
And if you were to read Vitulkas in Science of Homeopathy, when he talks about aggravations, should we pause and pull it? Because he talks about how you need to let them, go through their aggravation.
Let them go. But that's what he said. No, because and I use that example to teach Vitulkas' Appendix B.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And it's number 4, and he says, great remedy, don't do anything.
Right. So imagine,
Don't touch it.
Imagine you're the CEO with your head in the freezer with knives in your eyeballs. You do not want this. And I think that's how 4th edition prescribing gets a bad name. I think that's why. I mean, I totally understand how people would have said, Because especially if you're taught Kentian, give a dose and wait, and you've never gone through, because Hahnemann would have understood that, and then he said, oh, hang on a second. He goes back to the drawing board, and this is the 5th edition of the Organon, was interweaving his understanding of acute and chronic disease. And it wasn't until the 6th edition where he was clear. And if you want to do some more investigating of this, go and look at the comparisons between the 5th and 6th edition. Look at all the paragraphs where he made changes, and you see that it's not the philosophy, it's the delivery of the medicines for the most part. And that clear distinction between treating something acutely and chronically. And so I think at the end of the day, that's like the biggest takeaway. And it sort of brings us to this other idea, which is another conversation that goes on amongst the people on the internets and the socials, is about it. Well, Hahnemann, has been dead for a long time, and if he was still alive, he would need the modern homeopathy, right?
No.
No. And so I think that there are some. I think there would be some really interesting discussions about how diseases have progressed, but at the very basics, the principles of homeopathy are based on the laws of the universe. That doesn't change. Science changes, right? The idea of the scientific portion of things is to constantly evaluate the work. Is it working, right? And if not, then you make a change. And this is what Hahnemann did. He went through lots of different changes, right? So, and in a lot of my public lectures, if you've seen them, I have, depending on the lecture, a slide or a series of slides where I go through Hahnemann's changes and discoveries, everything from the additions of the Organon, but also to the preparation of the medicines. So, for example, Hahnemann used to say that if you've got a soluble substance, a succussion is also a trituration. In other words, if you've got some,
it's the equivalent
of a trituration. And then
to liberate the spirit out of matter.
Well, he wasn't using the terminology at that time.
Right.
At that time, it was just part of the preparation. By the time he gets to around the development of the 6th edition of the Organon, right, he comes back and he says, actually, the trituration, even of a soluble substance, is important for the liberation of spirit from matter.
Yeah.
He talks about the number of succussions. How many? Do you alter them? Do you vary them? In the final edition of Chronic Diseases, he says he's settled on 10. Although in the 6th edition of the Organon, he's got a little leeway in the number of succussions, but it's specific to the delivery of the remedy. But also, another evolution is, and this is an interesting one, I think, when Hahnemann was first proving remedies, right? So he's trying to understand what we would now say is the toxic threshold, right? Avogadro's number we use as the point at which there's no more material substance left.
I think that is the area there would have been a lot of changes because he's a chemist.
Well, he's an alchemist.
Right. But you keep going.
Yeah, because at first, Hahnemann was looking at each substance and trying...
As if they're all the same?
No, not in the beginning.
Oh.
In the beginning, each of them had its own toxic threshold. And so he was working on the preparations to try and understand that's why when you look at some of the early information, it's probably in Fragmenta, where he's talking about how you would do a certain, potency level, right? And it's based on the toxicity of the substance. I'm not sure that's where maybe, but I think aphorism 269 overrides that, right? Hang on, let me just grab my Organon. Aphorism 269.
Right before 270.
It sure is, which of course has a sticky in it. 269. For its own special purpose, the homeopathic medical art develops to a formerly unheard of degree the internal, spirit-like medicinal powers of crude substances. It does so by means of a procedure which belongs exclusively to it, and which was untried before my time, whereby these substances become altogether more than ever, indeed immeasurably, penetratingly effective and helpful, and italicized for emphasis, even those substances in which in their crude state they do not manifest the least medicinal power in the human body. Then he adds this is a new paragraph in the 6th edition. This remarkable alteration in the properties of natural bodies is achieved through the mechanical action on their smallest particles by trituration and succussion, while these particles are separated from one another by means of an intervening and different substance that is either dry or liquid. This procedure develops the latent dynamic powers of the substance which were previously unnoticeable as if slumbering. The dynamic powers of these substances mainly have an influence on the life principle, on the condition of animal life. Therefore, this process is called dynamization or potentization. Its products are called dynamizations or potencies of different degrees. So basically in that aphorism, he's saying not only is it that any substance, whether it has curative properties or not, like whether it's known for that, right? Or whether it is inert or whether it is active, whatever, that when you do this process, you are awakening the slumbering potential. You're, releasing the spirit from matter. And so I think that to me,
awakening the beast.
That's the change. So you were right. We sort of took a little turn because at first you said he sees all substances as equal. Ultimately, it comes to that. But it started as investigating each.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But then when I think about what, and I think about this a lot because, is this system complete? Well, if you look at Hahnemann's discoveries and what was he doing, what was he trying to do over time? The one thing we can say for sure is he was not trying to turn homeopathy into isopathy. We know that. It's the footnote to 56. He says nothing but calamity will result. So that right away takes off the table all of this detoxifying stuff, because detoxification is essentially isopathy. Not bad, just different, right? Where I think that I would love to see more understanding is we'd need to know, and this is of course if I didn't have to work or do anything, I would just research this until I could figure it out. But it's basically furthering how Hahnemann made the leap to chronic diseases. What all did he do between 1816 and 1828? Right? What did he discover? Because I don't think homeopathy would change. I mean, look at the, what is it, if aphorism 26, maybe 26, where he talks about the luminous moons of Jupiter and all that. Is that 26? Mm-hmm. Somewhere around there. But Hahnemann uses all these examples from the natural world to talk about how the principle of a stronger similar works. It's a universal law. It's really simple. But then when he gets into the complexities of chronic disease, then you could see this sort of flowering of all of this information, right? He's like, oh, wait a second. There are these miasmatic diseases, and it's not every infectious disease needs to get an isopathic, whatever. But he saw how Sora was this underlayment, and then there were these other diseases. This is why I'm often interested to listen to or to try and understand where these influences might have come from, right? So without getting into the alchemical stuff, following some of these alchemists where their philosophical principles are in alignment with what Hahnemann was applying, right? That is, there's sort of this other level of mystery that I think, that's probably not a great word, but I think there might be there might be another level of deepening of the understanding for how to apply the principles. But even that being said, look at the cases that we managed to turn around. It doesn't happen with one dose, but people have seen the cases, videos that I and other homeopaths have presented of people just using very, classical principles. Here, I'm saying it now, but using the principles of homeopathy to bring people around to a greater level of health. I mean, you've got tons of them, right? So I don't know. I don't see where we need to change it. I don't know. I think we should keep thinking about it and talking about it.
Yeah, I'm happy to keep talking about it. I don't want to think too much about it.
Why not?
Well,
hurt your little head.
There's other things to think about.
Rugby. Who's playing this weekend?
British and Irish Lions.
Oh boy.
Against the Aussies.
Are you going to wake up at 3 a.m. to watch it?
Nope.
Good.
No, I need my sleep at the moment.
You do indeed.
Oh my God, I am so sleep deprived. I went to sleep on a dime.
Don't worry, no one heard you snoring.
Really?
Except me and a house cleaner.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
that was
okay.
Intense.
That's all right.
All right. Well, look, we're at 55 minutes. So, my friends, that is that.
I feel like a bit of a downer. Like a Debbie Downer.
Don't worry about it. You look great.
Well, that's really what matters. I mean, at the end of the day, it's... but, like, we've got this magic. We've got this, like, incredible magic. And we just have to, it's there for us to understand.
And apply.
Mm-hmm. That's all. And we just do it together. We just keep asking the questions. Right?
All right.
Okay.
Love it.
Good. That's it.
See you, folks.
We are out of here. See ya.
Dreaming of becoming a homeopath, but you need a little more time to make it happen? The Academy of Homeopathy Education's part-time program gives a bit more flexibility to study. It's a 4-year journey designed to fit into your real and busy life. Learn more at ahe.online.